Sweet. We are live on YouTube. Awesome. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Community Committee. Sweet. Woo. Yeah. Cheering on silent videos. They're muted. Funny. Cool. We got a pretty straightforward agenda today, but we'll start with initiative updates. And first of all, welcome back from the conference. It was an awesome conf. So as we do initiative updates, if there are any updates also from stuff that happened in the conference, let's get those in there too. We will just go down the list, I suppose, in reverse order here. We had a good session for website redesign. Gave an awesome community corner talk about the history of website redesign. Got a couple folks interested in helping out and got some good feedback from the group there. And then during Collaborators Summit, we canceled the main website redesign meeting that day because we were all in person for the most part. And then at the Collaborators Summit, we started talking about technical implementation a little bit, mostly technical requirements for what we want to be doing moving forward, and kind of agreed on a general architecture structure. We'll keep talking about that as we move forward with implementation. Yeah, and we also got news from official news from a developer online named Flavio. He's over in Italy. He published this amazing thing. I don't remember if I made it last time. It's the definitive node.js guide or node.js handbook, and he has offered to just our this like 30 articles on getting started with Node.js into the website redesign repo. So we're going to be getting a huge data dump. I need to loop back with him and see how it's going. He was working on the PR. There's the link to the content if you're interested. Cool. That's website redesign. And Shaw is not here for user feedback. Unfortunately, he's resting up after a 16-hour plane ride.
Yeah, I don't think we've had a meeting. We haven't had a meeting since the last update, so I don't know that there's anything to update other than, there was the session at the summit itself, where Dan gave a bit of an overview. I'm trying to think. Nothing stands out in my mind in terms of the discussion that took place there, but I'm probably forgetting. So,
okay. Somebody want to update on progress around individual membership and the discussions going on there? I'm happy to if nobody wants to speak up. Yeah, so around individual membership, we had some more discussions specifically in the governance session that turned into an all-day brainstorm session for new joint foundation stuff. But specific things, Dan came to the merge subcommittee meeting yesterday to kind of give a presentation on the state of individual membership and the proposal. It was received well. It's kind of flexible pay-as-you-go model with tiered benefits, and people received the board representation seat proposal well, where at a certain point the board seat activates. The top level committees nominate the field of folks, and then the public votes on who they actually want as their representation. So all those points are received well. I think we're going to see it move ahead for more detailed implementation specifics. And yeah, that's where that is. Ben, you want to give an update on I10N? And
yeah, sorry, just eating some eggs.
Yeah.
There's not a huge update at the moment or anything, but I think something we really need to focus on is getting the word out and gathering translators for our top languages. I think if we start doing that and sort of regroup and reorganize, I think we'll start to see a lot more progress. We've seen some some translations trickling in and requests for new languages and things like that. But I think to gain the gravity that we want, just think a good regrouping and request for translation help will be a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do we have a mentorship update?
I have a question about IATNN. I'm not very familiar with the inner workings of it right now, so I'm kind of wondering what our top languages are, and I'm not sure if like it's already been identified, but I'm wondering, say, what the top 3 languages are that we know we want to address immediately or sooner.
Yeah, the Chinese, Spanish. If you look at the crowd-in projects, you can see where the most activity has been. But I'd say like Chinese is #1, and then Spanish probably following after that. And we have interest in other languages too. But I think that those are the biggest places we could look for help.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Mentorship. You have a rep from the mentorship initiative who'd like to say hi? That's okay, we're missing a few people today. Cool, any other updates before we dive into agenda items? Awesome, let's make it happen. So we have, where's the agenda? There it is. I'm gonna go through we're gonna talk about the charter changes, those PRs first, because I think they're mostly just here for awareness. So we'll go through those first, then we'll move on to community chapters and travel fund visa assistance. So we have a issue number 385 and 384. These are the charter changes. I believe we've reached consensus on 384. We're just waiting. Which Tracy we're in on here. I think we're just waiting on word from the official vote before we can merge this in. Although I don't see why that would be a problem. I think it was on the agenda for the board meeting over at the conference, but we'll wait for Tracy for the final call on this. The other one, just awareness 385. Please pile on. I know we're at the conference and we were all very otherwise focused, but would be awesome to get consensus on changes in 385 for charter changes to get to the board for the next meeting, which I do not actually know when the next one is, but it should be coming up in the next few weeks. So got a little bit of time. Yeah, anybody want to talk about charter changes or have any thoughts or ideas before we move on? Cool. Moving right along. So let's take a little look at issue number 280. This is initiative for Node.js community chapters. Wally, do you think you have the most context? Do you want to give a brief brain dump on the status of this?
Yeah, sure. So I had meetings with you, Michael, little bit with Mini also. So, and like most of you know the context of this issue, and I think the first action level item on this could be, which I think we should do for the others, is to create a separate repository for the partner communities. For now, we have two, like LinkedIn, and I think there's for the notes, the Slack chapter, the Slack group. So I think maybe in future we will have some few, and having them in the community committee is, we can keep in the same like repository, but if they have some concerns, they have questions, they have issues, they can have a separate space for that, like a separate repository where we can list that down and they can just open their questions and everything.
So I'd like to, at least early on right now, push us to keep it in the community committee space. We can spin it out into its own thing if it once it gets momentum. But I've noticed that when we spin off new repositories, they have the tendency to get lost occasionally. Yeah, and so I think it'll build a bit more momentum if we keep the current partner communities document. I think we also, when we were talking with Tracy, we wanted to define what a partner community is a little more concretely, right? There were some issues about requirements around that. So Wally, do you think we could get a separate meeting on the book where we maybe just iterate on those requirements a bit with Tracy? Or not Tracy, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, Tracy, that's right. It's early here. Yeah, because so my understanding of action items here were we need to flesh out the partner community's requirements doc a little bit more, and then maybe work with while working with the leaders from the Node School SF group. Brian Hughes specifically, who has a lot of context on both ComCom policy and on how Node School works.
Brian, and the second was Ruben.
Awesome. So I'm for now going to remove the ComCom agenda label from this, and let's get a separate chat on the books. And once we have a document synthesized, we can throw the label back on and talk about next steps in here.
Okay.
Yeah, that sound good?
Does anyone wants to add like questions, or if anyone has some concerns, you can ask me right now, or you can just add comments in the issue.
Awesome. And I'll comment with action items on the ticket as well, so that we can follow up on it.
Yeah.
Sweet. That was quick and easy. Awesome. Anything else people want to comment on community chapters?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Not on that specific topic.
Okay.
Yeah. Sweet.
Awesome.
Let
me just for the people who don't know the background about the issue, just let me just introduce what it is. It's having a collaboration, a kind of partnership with Node School chapters locally, with like community committee or node.js foundation in some way, so that we can have the ComCom can have a physical presence in the public, like a member of the ComCom or a member of the Node.js Foundation would be present in the events and in the workshops which Node School organizes, and it can help reduce the communication gap between the audience and the public who are present in the events. And they can just raise their concerns, add feedback. It can help us in the mentorship initiative. It can also help us in user feedback initiatives and all other things. So just to have a physical presence and build a better communication channel between the audience and public and the ComCom. So that's the whole idea.
The want really spawned from that need for a more on the boots on the ground presence.
Exactly.
So Node School has that reach already, and has we know a lot of the organizers in these circles. So we figured why not help promote them a little bit. It coincides well with wants from the website redesign initiative, so we can kind of upsell a bunch of local Node schools that we've deemed partner communities. We already have a process for partner communities, so we can kind of leverage that process for bringing in folks into the fold. So I'm excited for it.
Might want to suggest something for that. There is in the Node School repo, in the Node School organization, there is a repo called Organizers. You may want to open an issue in there talking about this.
There is actually an issue with a lot of comments already. If you can just, so there's a positive feedback from a lot of organizers who have been who are organizing at different Node School chapters. And there's a lot of positive feedback from that side. People are just, excited about this if we do this.
That was issue number 520 in Node School /organizers. It looked like...
Looks closed.
It looks closed, but there was an ask for a PR.
Yes.
I don't know why it's killed.
It was like on Node School side, there is nothing to be done. The only thing is open a PR with the required changes at that side. So we get So as soon as we are clear from the Node Foundation side, I'll update the changes on both sides.
Awesome. We'll include that in the action item notes on the ticket for us. Sweet.
There's a comment. Not sure if y'all saw it. Can we have a quick update on the highlights of the awesome stuff that happened at Node.js Interactive for the people who couldn't be there. I think that's a great idea if we have time for that, Adam.
Yeah, we only have one more thing left on the agenda. So I think that's certainly something we can do. It was kind of my hope in the update section as well. So let's get through this last item, because we can probably iterate for a while on how awesome collab session was, and then we'll move on to rehashing all the cool stuff that went down. Yeah, Ben's happy. Cool. So last item on the agenda, number 239. This is wondering, note that Tierney opened up. This is wondering if there's a way that we can better support travel fund recipients who need to apply for visas. So there was a number of folks who could not attend the Collaborator Summit or the conference because of visa issues. And we actually have a number of people on this call and in the ComCom who just barely made it in and got their visa approved just in time. So it's a pretty long and meaty thread about help here, and we got to figure out a way to move forward. I think we need to identify exactly what that list of changes we can make is, and it might involve documentation updates, it might involve actual policy updates, or process updates on the foundation side. Although from talking with folks there, it sounds like when working with other governments, there's only so much you can do. So yeah, Waleed, it sounds like you also have a lot of context here, since yeah, is there anything you'd like to add to
the visa stuff?
Issue number, yeah, the visa stuff, 239. What you think would be good for next steps and
yeah, so yeah, for me, I got the visa like 2 days before the conference and bought the plane ticket a day before the conference. So yeah, I think, yeah, and I think most of the time people, the problem is that people doesn't know what should be provided in the application. So the thing is, it's not listed on the website or it's not in the requirement, but there are some things which if you can add, it can increase your chance of getting a visa. So I think we should, like, if you can have a team of like 3 or 4 people who recently applied or who mostly like have some insights or some who can help out with the visa process of the country where our event is happening, and that team can help everyone who is applying for the visa. They can have a meeting with those person, and they can guide with the documentation some extra things they can do to increase the chance. So that would be a lot helpful.
Wally, this is Zibi. Have you also sent some of this feedback to the Node.js Foundation, JS Foundation events team?
No.
I think that could also be really good. So, after the meeting, it might be good to kind of compile what the challenges were and things that you think might help with that, so they can kind of look to improve that, not just with the interactive events, but also potentially with some other events at the Linux Foundation.
Okay.
We always appreciate that. I'm happy to send you their emails too.
Okay, yeah. Definitely. I'll share my experience. Definitely.
That sounds awesome. So someone expressed interest in the ticket, if I'm remembering correctly, on kind of championing this mini initiative. Because I think the deliverable here is a list of recommendations for either process changes or documentation updates or communication updates. Yeah, so I'd love to see somebody with more knowledge than me of the visa process step up to help out here.
I can help if we can just ask this on the issue itself. People who have some experience and who wants to make up this team of like 3 or 4 people, and we can list it down somewhere in the visa documents, so that the next time someone is applying, they can just reach out to us on those people and contact us to get help. Yeah.
Perfect. Wally, do you want to help drive that forward?
Okay, yeah, I'll open a PR.
Awesome.
And let me know if anyone else wants to jump in.
So one thing I just wanted to clarify, Willie, you were talking about maybe having a couple people that could be on hand to answer questions.
Yes.
Has that been discussed in that thread at all?
It is.
Okay. I just want to know, like, I like the idea specifically of having people to consult around this versus just adding to some documents somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I added in the document, that there should be like 3 or 4 people who you communicate directly on a call in a meeting, then just reading the documents, because a lot of things you cannot just write about it. It's good if you can arrange a meeting with a person who had the same experience or applied to a visa process before.
Yeah,
so cool. That would be a lot helpful. Yes,
I like that a lot. It's like a visa on call.
Yeah, we can open a service like the visa agent, something like that. So
could we actually set up a new? It would be nice if it wasn't individual people's names on there. We can kind of keep on call, but like if people need an immediate question answered for visas, should we set up a separate communication channel like visas at node.js.org, or Zibby, is there another place that we should be pointing them to that's already established
for visa stuff?
Yeah.
I would say, I sent it. So what I would recommend is, one, feel free to send any kind of questions or any meetings that are coming up to pr@nodejs.org, and then I can just funnel it to the correct people. And also in the GitHub repo, be sure to tag Tracy, Lee, and me, and we can add in our colleagues when appropriate. I think she's kind of our head of events at the Linux Foundation, so she could be a really good source in kind of answering maybe some of these questions that are coming up with visas, just because, again, they run a lot of events, so they know, what might be a rat hole that folks are going down and what might be a solution to some of these problems, because I just want to make sure they're on these calls and in these conversations, given that they have a lot of experience with visas and getting people to events all over. And it might be just conducive to have them join these calls, join GitHub threads and stuff like that. So if you could just tag me, I can tag Lara and team and make sure that they're privy and aware of this stuff. Does that make sense, or does anything seem not streamlined?
That's totally fine, but the thing is, so what we do in the documents is we will add, we will tag you and Tracy to so that people can reach out to the events team from the Linux Foundation and you. But how would they contact the person like me or someone else who recently had experience, or who can just help them out or look into what documents do they have, things like that. Yeah, they reach out to you first, and then you can just
and then I can just connect you directly, or I can I can also just send an email to introduce you now. Let me
that would be okay.
Process.
Okay.
Yes.
And if it is kind of short notice, I can add myself to that list.
Okay.
It's not people are available. I'm not saying I'm a travel expert, but I have been applying for visas for like my whole life.
Okay, yeah, that's the only thing. Yeah, thanks for
And I don't mean to volunteer someone else, but you could ask them. Joey has a fair bit of experience applying for visas too, and she has taken interest in helping with the visa documents before. Not volunteering them, just suggesting people could reach out and ask.
Yeah, it would be good for ComCom to help maintain that list of on-call resources for folks.
Yeah.
Can I add a note a little bit to escalate the perspective? I want, and I'm reiterating it, and it's the 4th time that there was a collab summit during my tenure. Collab Summit is an exclusive event. It requires time, money, and international politics, things that some members of the community, in this case me, cannot overcome in order to join the summit. Please, all of you who did, keep that in mind. For instance, taking notes, streaming sessions, making sure that no decision is being finalized without, taking the proper channels of bringing it up for consensus. In terms of facilitating, there are things such as telepresence. It sounds stupid, but it's a thing, a robot that is a proxy of you that can join the conference. Also, the Node Foundation has decided explicitly to boycott the United States as a place of holding conferences. That's, I know I'm not the only one who has been excluded by that boycott. All that, keep that in mind, that with all the, visa help and monetary help, there are still people who cannot make it to Collab Summit. It is an exclusive event, and keep us who can't join in mind. That's it.
There will always be hurdles that some folks, whether it's scheduling or because or otherwise, that will prevent us from attending. And then we have done not done a great job at remote presence at these Collab Summit events. But I know it's a hard problem since we don't know the venue ahead of time often. But it's certainly something that we need to improve on in a large way.
Sometimes streaming, putting a webcam is so much simpler than, overcoming hurdles of visa and budget and time. And we are a technology-based foundation. We could, take that into account and do a better job.
Manil?
On the subject of telepresence, I think that's something we should focus on and have an opportunity to do that with the discussion about expanding the travel fund and with the discussion around how more people could benefit from it. Part of that should really be expanding like any investment we put into telepresence. And by investment, I don't mean just money, just effort around processes to make that actually viable. That being said, we could start sooner by I don't want to phrase it as enforced, but making sure that the processes we discuss ahead of time and put in place, like there is a facilitator's guide, that we actually do follow those, even though in the moment we feel tired and we just like try to just get stuff done. Following those would actually help to include more people, and I think that it should just be normal to start following some sort of process around handling things. So maybe that facilitator's guide, to make it not just something we refer to during the Collab Summit, we should start using that as something, we should turn it into something we can use for every meeting. And that way we go to it every time we handle a meeting. There are just some parts of it that are like Collab Summit specific. I might suggest that as an action item to build out so that we're just used to following a process each time, and we do account for people who are remoting in, and eventually we can turn that into something that's more like telepresence.
Yeah, so this is it's something we have down pretty well for our async conversations, like these meetings, because we can all join from our laptops. We haven't quite figured out the process yet for in-person meetings. Zibby, is this something that the events folks can help out with? Like, honestly, it's an equipment issue often.
Yeah,
we come in and just have our laptops. Like, we need a good conference mic and live streaming camera for every room at every Collab Summit that can just stream nonstop, so that facilitators don't even have to think about it. Like, that would be the ideal.
No, that's something that I can bring back to them, and that is something we can easily budget into next year. I don't think it's that much to ask. So let's also remember as a group, when we're starting to plan out next year's event, and I think we're still determining location, place, thinking about like, okay, what were some of the positives of Collab? And then this seems like one of the things that we want to improve on. So when we're organizing, we can say we really want to be streaming this event, and the events team can figure out how much that would cost and just ensure that that's factored into the budget.
Awesome. I think there's a discussion going on in node.js/summit somewhere for starting to plan next year's,
that's related because the one issue this year was that we didn't have rooms. We have like big rooms and like hall, and then like telepresence, and the meeting doesn't work in a very big room because of the sound. You can't hear the next person. You cannot speak to the mic if it's a very big table and like 10 people are sitting. And if there are like small rooms for 5 or 10 or 20 people, then it's really good. Then it's a really good place to just start a meeting on through Skype or Zoom or anywhere. So yeah, that's something we should consider before booking the event hall or day we are going to do it. The second thing is that we should also look into that. Who is going to be responsible for starting the meeting? Like this time, sometime we didn't know it. It could be anyone. Some people were asking, can you start? Do you have the charger? Do you have the laptop charged? Do you have a mic? Is it working fine? But these things should be finalized beforehand. There should be a person in the collaborative team who would just volunteer that I'll be present there at this time, like with my laptop and and I'll start the meeting and you can join this room. Someone should take the responsibility in each group. Then it can be handled very well, and not just like asking someone at their time, random person at their time, can you just start it now? So
Manil next, and then I'd love to move on to rehashing some of the awesome stuff that went on at Collab Summit, since we'll have a little bit of time at the end. Manil, go for it. Oh, also I linked to the Summit issue in the chat. It's issue number 135 on node.js/summit.
So actually that would be a great segue, because we're talking about the Summit, and then we're gonna actually give updates about how that went. Kind of like a postmortem, but there's already one happening. So what we did try to do this year, and this only started in the week before that, is we tried to have a process that we would be able to give people. So I'm like linking it in there at the Summit, in the Summit people. It was supposed to be a process that would give people somewhere to quickly access the resources that they need. Like, you need to start Zoom. Oh, you need to start Hangouts, like something, just so they don't have to remember things on the go, because it's a lot to ask facilitators to already prepare content and an agenda. Now, on top of that, if they have to adhere to a process, which is very necessary to be able to include everyone and make sure that things, like we have the right outcomes, that there are action items at the end of it, it's still a lot to ask. So we thought we'd standardize the process. And so in the leading up to the Summit, the organizing team, we tried quite hard to balance out being able to move sessions around, but at the same time have a schedule, because for the past, we were using lessons learned from previous summits, and before, like for example, at Berlin, it was a little bit too chaotic. It was less structured. The time before that, there was less of that. It was more structured, but at the same time, there wasn't as much flexibility, I think, that we wanted. So this was supposed to be balanced. And on the whole, it seemed to turn out okay. So we don't want to box people in too much, but what we're saying is, if we were to use a guide, that would make things easier. Now, we realize that I don't think people use the guide, or if there was, I didn't see it. I didn't go to all the sessions, obviously, I went to just a few. But we didn't use the guide in our sessions. And I feel like when it comes to processes, we need to build a habit of using them. So we don't have a habit to go there. And if once or twice a year, we just decide to, oh, by the way, there's a session facilitator guide, that's probably not going to happen. So I'm thinking this should be moved out of Summit, and this should be moved to something like admin, where we start following this at every meeting, and we build it out so that it's generalized enough that any person running a meeting or any working group running a meeting can use it. But at the same time, there is a process that we know to go to, just, I don't know, some sort of flow. We mark things as optional. So I kind of just propose we do something about moving this to admin and socializing this around and making sure people know it exists and start following it, so that next time Collab Summit comes around, it's just a matter of process that we're used to.
Awesome. We got +1 in the chat as well. So that's awesome. It's also, I think we also need to make it foolproof for organizers. So like it shouldn't necessarily be on them to think about how they're going to be doing telepresence. And we know the rooms we're going to be using before Collab Summit. So every single room should be set up to be live streaming all the time, where anybody can walk in and out, just like how you can walk in and out of the room itself. You can come in and out of the live stream for that room at different times. So that's certainly something that events can help with. But at that point, it becomes a tool that can amplify the amplify the reach of the folks actually running these sessions instead of forcing them to do more work. But on that note, is there anything else anybody wants to get in before we move on to talking about how awesome the collab session was and talk about what we saw there?
I just wanted to say like one quick note about I like the idea of maybe moving this to admin. I like the idea of sharing the processes and like lifting everybody up around those processes. I'm a little bit hesitant on the side of like making it a rule, like yes to proposing good guidelines, but no to like saying you have to have a specific rigid checklist that every meeting needs. But we don't have a checklist yet, or nothing beyond that document yet anyway. So I'm arguing semantics here. I shouldn't be.
I'm a firm
Sorry about that. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that we don't have to mandate things for, like processes if they have to be mandated, they're not good processes. I think if we build them out right, people will start adopting them and they will share it with other people and say, hey, this is working for us. You should really give this a go. So I'm for working on this first and adopting it ourselves and honing it, and then hopefully it takes hold and we work on it until it does.
Yep, it becomes part of the culture. Cool. On that note, who saw something awesome at Collab Summit that they want to share with folks that might not be there? I'll preface it with I was locked in one room for most of the time, so I also didn't get to see a lot of the sessions. I
saw a balloonicorn.
That's awesome. Yeah, there was a wild balloonicorn running around. I think it's named Tyranny, right? Weird.
I think some pretty awesome stuff happening was that there was some real investment from people to hash things out. A lot of several sessions moved around on the fly, and people really jumped in and were like, I'm going to go to this. And they stuck around for the entire time, even through lunch, just running out and grabbing something, coming back. And I think some people just didn't even get lunch. I really love that.
Yep. Yeah. Who went to sessions that were not governance? That's what I was locked in for the entire day. And I know we have an interesting group in that here. Yeah.
I went to moderation. It's been something that I've been reluctant to get involved with just because of the level of commitment it seemed they wanted and the emotional labor that I didn't feel like I had the training for. I was pleasantly surprised to see that the people who went there also had similar concerns, and the existing moderation team, I think Rich Trott, Tracy Hines, and Tierney, and one more person. Someone telepresence to him. Someone conference and I can't remember. Othim. I forget their name. I know their handle, OTHYM. Yeah, so they telepresence and we talked about they talked about what the experiences were, and they talked about the training that was going to be provided to people who were down to give that a shot. And there were 2 new people, Dan Shaw got onboarded into moderation, so did George, whose last name I don't know. But it seems like there is a need for that, and the time commitment is low. It's just that we need the training for it, and they're willing to provide it. So I think it's a really good opportunity for people who want to learn actual skills around conflict resolution, which I feel like I would find very useful, especially in the open source space and the community building space. And just, if you're in a team at all, if you work not in isolation. those would be super useful skills to have and could really like contribute back to the communities we're part of. So if you're down to join, I think the training will happen in early spring. I put my hand up for it. I'm not on the moderation team. I just put my hand up for it, and I'll see if I can make good use of it.
Awesome. And actually, looking at the list of people on this call right now, I think the folks who were at Collab Summit were myself, Manil, and Walid. And I can talk about the governance session a little bit, which was a blast, and I think resulted in some really good action items and some really good, level setting for everybody in the room. It was supposed to be an 1.5-hour session just after lunch. It then got pushed back to about, when did it start, like 10:30, 11? Yeah, 10:30. And ended up continuing the entire day, which was needed and very appreciated. So we brought the group through a number of ideation exercises. We spent like 45 minutes at the beginning just talking, level setting for what are we doing here, what processes happened already, how are people feeling about it, where's some of the direction and some of the major sticking points going to be in the near future. What does the timeline kind of look like? Are there any hard deliverables coming up, et cetera, et cetera. So from that conversation, we started, or we kind of, identified the goals for what we want to get to, which is going to be working towards a merged foundation, whatever that looks like. We get to control a lot of that process, if not the grand majority of it, which is kind of cool. The goal is hopefully for end of Q1 for a functional new foundation, which gives us a lot of runway. However, as a kind of intermediate point, we need to synthesize a list of what we'd like to see from foundation bylaws specifically, which should be very vague and very high level. There's issues for this on GitHub right now, but the hope is that we can deliver that to the board folks so that they can get unblocked from everything else they need to do to hit that Q1 goal for end of October or early November. So there's a goal to deliver just those few major bullet points that need to be texted in bylaws. Everything else should be pretty minimal. We then went on and started doing some fun, like high concepts ideation around what are new foundation values, like what should be the core tenets of this foundation. What would we like to see in major programs? What should the CPC and that top level ComCom group, what should they really be providing, and what services should they be running? And then we started grouping those programs under. We started asking, like, okay, well, how does this actually map to a core value? And figure out, like, do we have enough ideas here to actually support core values for the foundation? Started identifying big major questions and started talking about process for the next 6 months. How does that look? So all this we got synthesized in a brand new repo called node.js/bootstrap. This is a temporary repo. This is going away as soon as we figure it all out, but this is where we'll be collaborating along with JSF folks and honestly anybody who's interested and engaged to kind of figure out what this new structure looks like. So takeaways from an immense number of sticky notes that were just plastered all over the wall are in issue number 11 right now. The Bootstrap repo is fairly empty right now, but the kind of most fleshed out version of first stab at process is PR'd in PR number 7. This introduces an RFC process for new programs and documents for the 3 major groups, including CPC, what we're calling that's the Cross Project Council, kind of the TSC equivalent of a top level. The C3, which is the Cross Community Council, this is the top level equivalent of ComCom, and then a document to collect foundation expectations, which has been seeded with stuff from a few other PRs. And this is what the end of October deliverable will be. And again, just really high level, like, what do we think guiding values should be, which is going to be constantly iterated on over the next few months. And then that top level, like, stuff you need in bylaws, which we're going to iterate on for a while still here, and should honestly be as Sam Ruby keeps iterating should be stuff that will never, ever, ever have to change. And a lot of the stuff, the nitty gritty that we know and love will get discussed in that the like active running governance docs. So there's a lot of activity going on in here. There's which I love to see. It's a whole new fire hose to drink from on the GitHub side of things. So it's going to be fun to keep track of that. And it looks like one other little point of next steps process from the meeting. Miles opened up issue number 14 in Bootstrap, which is for a first in-person meeting where we can, well, in-person over VC meeting. I believe he has it for Monday, but these will happen frequently, I'm sure, and we're still figuring out exactly who's going to run all this. But it would be awesome for people who care to call in and start continue the discussion over there. But overall, in the actual session, I loved the tone of it. I loved the engagement of it, and I really liked how constructive the entire process felt between everybody in the room, the JSF folks, all the Node folk, all the Foundation folk who are in the room. Like it was a cool thing to witness. Even though it went on for a good 4 or 5 hours longer than I thought it would be, but it was a blast.
That's awesome.
Was my take on it, but I know Manil, Waleed, you were also in the room for that for a good chunk of it as well. I'd love to hear your takeaways and your thoughts from it.
I was super keen on like one particular part of it. It's Jacob from the Electron team suggested that we might actually be able to not be as North American centric anymore, and we'd be able to think a little bit more globally. So they actually suggested having kind of regional presences, like they would be a regional lead. This is like really far out, but what ends up happening is now we have a time zone problem where, for example, these meetings are really hard for anyone who's not within like I don't know, ±6 of UTC, and that's quite generous. That's the 12-hour window. That's the rest of the world just we're leaving out. But if we're actually able to implement what Jacob had just thrown out there, it's possible that we would be able to kind of have more of like a federated structure where groups would be able to be in their own region, have collaborative meetings, and then combined we would be able to like bring all those ideas together. But this, I know it sounds really vague, but I was pretty stoked about this. I wanted to throw that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I would like to add is how we did the process of the governance session, because we initially were like stuck with the decision at what is being changed and what is not being changed, and then we just skip that part and let's iterate on what's come in their mind about the values of the foundation and what should be the preference in the new governance of the new foundation, and how everyone did the iterations and shared their thoughts and ideas, and we just raised our points, and so that it can be shared with everyone else who is not just like the Raphael was asking that. And like Adam created the Bootstrap community, Bootstrap repository, and just added all the points we did. So the whole process of that session was really good. It wasn't like we are like making decisions and things like that. It's just like everyone's sharing their what they think about how it should be, how can we improve it, and then just put it in a document where the people who cannot attend it or who wants to iterate on it can consider it and add their feedback. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, I know certainly whenever I try and host, especially in-person sessions, I try and make the takeaway to be just more material to bring to the async sessions where decisions actually are made. Yeah, so there were no decisions made, at least in governance, that's for sure. But just more content to spark discussion in the repo. And my gosh, do we have a lot of content? So
Yeah, yeah, I can remember pulling up the sticky notes from the board.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we have about 4 minutes left. So keep an eye on time. Any other last minute things we want to discuss or talk about? Make sure we get in before more folks start dropping off. No? Awesome. Well, if that's it, I think we'll call it a ComCom meeting.
Yeah. Nice.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks,
thank you all for calling in.
Thanks all.
Awesome.
Bye.
Really.
Bye.
I look forward to seeing y'all on GitHub.
Yep. Good to see y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.